Welcome back, everybody. As you can tell, this is going to be the Aram preview, and just to get things out of the way, this character is probably going to be one of the most pulled limited characters I've ever seen, and you'll see why in a good moment or two. However, to start things off, as you can see and as you probably saw from the preview video, her animation looks pretty cool. And honestly, from this animation, I kind of assumed she was going to be a DPS, but actually, well, surprisingly, she is a Fire Soul Weaver, which is honestly fair, as again, we did have Argent Hua Young, and Hua Young is the quote-unquote DPS slot for this summer event. Now, some things that you may be interested in terms of Aram is how a Soul Weaver, especially a Fire Soul Weaver of all things, can be super insane, with characters like Tamarin or other Fire Soul Weavers, or just Soul Weavers in general, maybe not being nearly as insane as you might think. However, before we get to that, let's first take a look at our base stats. If you've ever looked at your epicseven payment history and thought to yourself, yeah, that added up a bit too fast, you're not alone. But thanks to AppGallery, there's a way to get rewarded just for spending in epicseven. Right now, if you install epicseven through AppGallery, you'll get a $2 welcome coupon, and more importantly, 20% cashback every time you make a PayPal purchase in-game. Yes, you heard me right, and it also works on any Android device or emulator, so you don't need a Huawei phone at all. Let me break down how to do this, as honestly the setup's pretty easy. First, you'll start by clicking on the link in the pinned comment or description. You'll download AppGallery, then HMS Core, and following this, you'll create a Huawei ID, making sure your region is set to Brazil. From this, you'll then open AppGallery, search for epicseven, install it directly, and then log into your existing account like normal. Once you're in, you can head back to the promo page, hit get it now, and receive your $2 welcome coupon. But if you're looking for your cashback, you can then just purchase something using PayPal in-game, and AppGallery will send you a 20% cashback coupon directly to your account. And then you could use it on Emil Aria, Robin, or any character you want in the future. What are you waiting for? Just make sure to follow the steps as I've described and begin earning more with your spending in epicseven. Thanks again to AppGallery for sponsoring today's video though. She has 114 base speed, and aside from this, honestly her stats are not super insane. Now, on that note, the first thing we need to talk about is her skill 2, and if this doesn't already convince you, this should certainly be the reason for why you, I guess, would want to pull her. At the start of the first battle, what this ability reads is that if the enemy takes the first turn, you grant immunity to all allies for 3 turns, and if an ally takes the first turn, you instead grant increased effectiveness to all allies for 3 turns. Now, in addition to this, after you suffer an attack that attacks all allies, you activate Warm Up, and this gives you vigor and speed to all allies for 2 turns. In addition to this, you also gain 10 souls. Now, interestingly, this is on a 3 or 4 turn cooldown. However, in terms of the reason why this is so important, obviously, this is the, I want to say band-aid, but more specifically, I guess, forced answer / counter to a character like Harsetti. Now, you might be wondering to yourself why I say that specifically. However, aside from just the immunity, you may be thinking to yourself, well, Connor, actually Harsetti can strip. That's not actually true though. However, or rather I should say, because Harsetti's checkmate, aka her S3, actually does not strip, instead it decreases buff durations by 2 turns. Now, as you can tell, this is a 3-turn buff, which means that this character, obviously, at least from the first line, is already designed to kind of counteract someone like Harsetti, which feels pretty cool. However, the next thing that we should talk about, obviously, is that this third line here, where it says after suffers an attack that targets all enemies, well, you grant yourself vigor, and although the speed buff may not be necessarily, you know, super crazy for Harsetti, as again she removes all real speed tuning in the game, this alongside the vigor is crazy. This makes you pretty tanky, all things considered, especially after you use the S3 onto the Harsetti, and Harsetti, of course, with her S3 won't be able to, well, will not be able to as reliably, I should say, be able to use her kit or any of her abilities to really strip a team that has Aram on it. That said, I do want to say that part of the reason why I think this character is so interesting and so strong is because she's not just built as a Harsetti counter, as some characters in the past have obviously been shown to be, but instead she also has some decent usability and flexibility, which in my opinion is the reason why a lot of characters end up being strong. Characters like Angel of Light, characters like Bellion, though they can be used for one specific purpose, things like stripping or things like applying or cleansing or even in some cases removing souls, they are also solid by themselves. And I think the fact that Aram has the effectiveness does make her potentially a character that you can, well, use alongside cleave or speed units, and that's not even looking at the rest of her kit. And of course her giving vigor and speed buff, which in my opinion are also two of the strongest buffs that we have in the game, depending on how you actually use them. Now, the reason why this is also insane is because as you take a look with the skill 3 here, what you're reading here is maybe the first skill cooldown reset or a skill cooldown specific reset that we've seen from a character since I think maybe I don't know exactly what it's, the read or like the updates to like the 3 stars. I'm blanking. You guys know what I'm talking about. It's one of the updates to like the 3 stars. I think it was, I can't even remember exactly who it was. In any case, it's been a while basically since we've had a character that resets skill cooldowns. The last time that we, if I'm not mistaken, had a character like this was maybe, again, one of the 3 stars, or it was maybe even Iseria, and Iseria's was at the start of the game. Now, to be clear, that's not to say that we haven't had characters that manipulate or adjust to skill cooldowns in general. However, to have a complete reset of a skill cooldown on a character, more specifically on a limited character, is super insane. But that's alongside a couple of other pretty interesting aspects of this ability. Number one, you grant exploit weakness to an ally except for the caster, which is huge. But in addition to that, the skill cooldown is major, and this is in addition to a 100% combat readiness push, all on the same ability. Now, to be clear, you also cannot have this ability affected by you can't reset someone like Aram with this ability. So no matter what happens, she will be able to use this S3, assuming she has, of course, the ability to take the turn and do things of this nature. But I think this is really, really insane, all things considered. Again, just because, well, this is kind of like a multi-flex unit where, yes, you could use this to kind of deal with someone like the Harsetti. However, just in general, this is a pretty powerful ability, though, of course, you do have to account for and deal with some of the other speed demons in the game. However, based on what we're seeing right now, there isn't really a need for any other stat here aside from effect resistance. And truth be told, since she does already kind of provide a decent amount of protection and survivability with the immunity, the vigor if you hit everyone, and speed buff, it doesn't necessarily feel like this is a character that will be easily debuffed either, as again, it feels like you may be able to just stack as much HP and effect resistance as you want. Though again, a 3-turn immunity against most characters will be super insane, unless of course they have buff strip. Now, to add to this, her skill 1 has a chance to stun. You can soul burn it to increase this chance to 100%. However, this S1 also heals all the health of all allies proportional to the caster's max HP. And with this is obviously a pretty insane sustain sort of ability if you want to play her slower. But now we need to talk about her artifact. Now, again, truth be told, this artifact, among the sea of really OP Soul Weaver artifacts, may not necessarily stand out insanely. I do think that having an artifact that increases the attack of all allies is still kind of nice, just because, again, if you're doing PvE or if you're trying to tune something like your Wyvern or your Rift, something along these lines, you can only have so many artifacts that will increase attack. Warhorn, though very nice, is again pretty limited. Only one character can have it. And then with a water gun, sometimes you feel like maybe your third character will want to have some increased attack as well. That's where I think this may end up being somewhat useful or somewhat more viable. However, if you're looking at it from a more PvP point of view, honestly, having the highest attack ally end their turn and then increase the combat readiness of the ally by 20% after, it feels like this is pretty niche in terms of who would use this, just because basically after your highest attack ally takes their turn. You would imagine that you, well, in most cases are done with what's happening. I don't necessarily feel that this is as game changing as, again, if it were the other way around. Like if the Soul Weaver ends their turn, then the highest attack character were to gain 20% CR. And as a result, this artifact looks cool, but maybe not super mandatory. Now again, just in terms of what we've seen from Aram, honestly, this character looks absolutely ridiculous. She's going to be coming to the banner starting the 17th. However, if we just take a look at the obvious characters that they, or the obvious showcase that they're going to include here, which is obviously going to be against Harsetti, you can see the Harsetti doesn't really do anything to this enemy team. Aram has the 3-turn immunity. Everyone is given vigor. There's speed. Oh, it completely evaded me that this actually counted for, or that it was actually an est or a non-attack skill with that ability. That makes this even crazier, because obviously that means that this was like the perfect pairing for Hua-Young, or the Argent Waves Hua-Young. The only thing I'd say about this that's a little concerning is that depending on how reliant you are on trying to use this character as a vigor buffer, there's a very good chance that, okay, let me rephrase. Although it appears on screen right now that it would make sense for someone to use someone like the Harsetti, or sorry, someone like Aram alongside the Hua-Young. If you're banking on the vigor to come out, you might be a little bit concerned just because, or you might be a little bit tested or tried, or you might feel a little bit bad about doing that just because, again, if the enemy team chooses not to AoE, or if they choose to, in some cases, I guess, like take someone like a pirate, or not a pirate captain, but rather an afternoon soak flan, it could feel a little bit more annoying if you're reliant on it. This showcase here, I think, is pretty interesting just because, again, you can use this for any character as they're showing on screen. This is actually one of the goofiest showcases that I think they've done in a while, where they're showing off a turn 1 Dark Corvus Soulburn, which, again, though I understand the intent and idea behind this, it is just kind of goofy to see them use the Fire Crow's artifact alongside Aram's S3 to one-shot someone on the team. Obviously, though, this is like one of the more interesting showcases that they've probably done in recent times. But honestly, not much to say here. That's pretty interesting, and that's pretty creative in terms of how you could use this character even for arena. And otherwise, guys, I mean, truth be told, I really honestly like the way that Aram is shaping out to be. Now, again, though I started this video off by saying that she is a must pull, and you may think, oh my god, must pull, it's gonna be so annoying, or like, oh my god, like, do I really have to spend on a character like this? Normally I would be maybe a bit more concerned if the character was less interesting, but this character has a lot to her. She has a stun, she has heals, she has the ability to reset one character, she has the weakness, or rather the S3 exploit weakness, which I think is super insane. Overall, all of this while also kind of allowing us to deal with the Harsetti is really nice. And I, for one, am always a fan of being able to skill reset a character to full and then be able to one-shot. In any case, though, guys, that's going to be it for today's video. Thanks again for watching. If you aren't going to pull for Aram, I understand. However, she looks really crazy, honestly. Thanks again for watching, though, guys. I'll see you on the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy. Good night.